Why was he standing so still, so rigid when everyone else laughed? The briefing room was alive with nervous chatter, the kind that soldiers used to hide the weight pressing down on their shoulders. She sat among them, her hands folded too tightly in her lap, pretending to study the map on the screen. But her eyes kept drifting, to him, to the man at the front, silent, unmoved, almost like stone. They chuckled at his seriousness, whispered about how he looked like he belonged in a painting, not in this room of sweat and restless boots, but then he shifted, a single step forward. And the laughter died. The air thickened, almost visible, as if the walls themselves had leaned closer. She felt it too, something she couldn't explain. It wasn't rank, it wasn't power, it was something else, something that reached deeper. But she didn't have time to figure out what it was, because in less than 12 hours she'd be on the ground, and everything she'd hidden, everything she hadn't told them, would be tested. Her name was Captain Elena Rains. Some called her steady, some called her cold, few really knew her, and that was the way she liked it. Yet tonight, as she stared at that map glowing against the wall, her composure cracked. Because this wasn't just another mission, this was personal. She felt the weight of the photograph in her pocket, a worn-out corner of a life that no longer existed, a reminder of why she'd stepped into this world of sand, steel, and silence in the first place, a reminder she never let anyone see. The laughter returned in fragments behind her. Someone cracked a joke about the heat, about how the desert didn't care about medals or stripes. Another muttered about the locals who never looked them in the eye. Elena forced a breath, their voices blurred. Because all she could hear was the sound of her own pulse, steady and uneven at once. And still his silence held. She wondered if anyone else noticed, the way he stood, the way he listened without reacting, the way he seemed somewhere else, like his mind had already walked the battlefield they hadn't even reached yet. She wanted to ask him what he saw, but she didn't. Instead, she lowered her gaze, pressed her palms against her knees, and tried to quiet the noise inside her chest. The operation was simple on paper: secure the compound, extract the target, no civilian casualties, quick, clean, controlled. But nothing ever stayed simple. Not in this war, not in this dust-choked corner of the world where loyalty shifted like sand dunes and silence could be both shield and weapon. And not for her. Because there was something about that compound, something no one else knew, something she hadn't told them, not yet. She closed her eyes just for a second and the image flashed, a memory she couldn't shake, a voice she couldn't forget. She forced her breathing steady, pushed it back down, opened her eyes. Duty first, secrets later. The briefing ended with the usual clipped commands, the scrape of chairs, the shuffle of boots, the metallic clink of gear being gathered. Elena moved with them, but slower, as though her body resisted, as though some part of her already knew what was coming. Outside, the night was heavy, stars cut sharp across the desert sky. The air smelled of oil, dust, and something faintly metallic. She adjusted her vest, tightened the strap of her rifle, and scanned the horizon. The silence was louder out here. She remembered her father's voice, gravel and calm. Stillness isn't weakness, Lena, it's preparation. Let them underestimate the quiet ones. She'd been 12 when he said that. He was gone now, taken by a war he didn't start, buried in a place she'd never see again. But his words stayed. And now, as she caught sight of the man again, the one who'd silenced the laughter with nothing but a step, she wondered if he'd heard something similar once. He passed her without a word, his eyes caught hers only for a second, steady, focused, almost like he could see through her. It rattled her more than she wanted to admit. She pulled her gaze away, exhaled through her nose, and climbed into the vehicle with the others. Engines roared, dust rose, voices faded beneath the grind of steel and the thrum of anticipation. She sat pressed against the door, rifle across her lap, staring at the passing darkness. Her team's voices floated around her, light jokes, forced bravado, someone humming low off-key. She wanted to join them, to feel what they felt, to laugh at something meaningless, if only to keep fear at bay. But she couldn't. Not with that photograph burning against her thigh, not with the secret lodged in her chest. Not when the compound they were heading toward was tied to everything she had left unresolved. She pressed her forehead lightly against the vibrating glass, closed her eyes, tried not to think of the voice she once loved, tried not to imagine what she might find inside those walls. But the questions wouldn't leave her. And one thought returned again and again. What happens when silence isn't a shield anymore, but a test? The road stretched on, endless and unkind. The desert night carried a dry wind that pushed through the cracks of the vehicle, brushing her cheek like a ghost's hand. She thought about the silence in that room, about the way laughter had died at the sound of a single step. She thought about her own silence, about the truths she swallowed day after day, keeping her steady, keeping her functioning. But every truth had weight, and sooner or later weight had to be carried or dropped. She shifted her grip on the rifle. The cold metal steadied her for a moment, as if reminding her what was real, what was in her hands. Her teammate Daniels leaned forward from the opposite bench. His helmet strap hung loose, his grin crooked under tired eyes. "Rains," he said over the rattle of the ride, "you think this one's actually as simple as they say?" She met his eyes, and for a moment she considered lying, considered feeding him the reassurance he was reaching for, but the truth clung to her tongue. "Nothing ever is," she said quietly. He laughed, not at her, not mocking, but the nervous laugh of a man who wanted to believe otherwise. He tapped the barrel of his rifle against his boot, rhythmic, like a drummer keeping time. She let the sound carry her thoughts away for a moment, but not far. They always returned. Always to the photograph. Always to the voice she couldn't forget. And always to the compound waiting for her in the dark. The convoy slowed, dust clouds caught in the headlights, turning the air into a shifting wall. Orders came low over the radio, clipped, precise. They were close. Her pulse rose, her chest tightened. She thought again of the man who had silenced the room, his step forward, his eyes locking on hers. Why did it feel like he knew something? Why did it feel like he saw what she carried, what she was hiding, even when she hadn't spoken a word? The vehicles stopped, boots hit dirt. The desert smelled sharper now, burned and bitter. Elena's lungs drank it in like punishment. The compound rose in the distance, a shadowed mass against the horizon, a place of walls, silence, and memories buried beneath stone. And as she looked at it, she knew this mission would not end the way the papers promised. Not for her. Not for any of them. What was waiting for her inside those walls? The compound stood like a scar on the horizon, dark, square, unyielding. Its silence stretched farther than the sand around it, deeper than the shadows of the night. Elena adjusted her gear, her hands steady though her stomach turned. She was good at this, at looking controlled when inside her chest was pounding. Around her the team moved with rehearsed precision, boots pressed into sand without sound, rifles angled forward, radios whispered orders too faint for outsiders to hear. They were a machine, but every machine had its weak points. Daniels muttered a curse under his breath. Martinez checked his mag 3 times in 30 seconds. Even Reeves, who usually joked the nerves away, kept his mouth shut. The compound's silence seemed to press on all of them. She could feel it, the weight of it, pulling on the back of her skull like an unseen hand. And then the step again. Not hers, his. The same man from the briefing. He hadn't said a word the entire ride, hadn't even looked at anyone else. But now, standing just ahead of her, he shifted, one step forward. His silhouette cut sharp against the night, and just like in that room, the chatter died. No one had mocked him this time, they didn't dare. It was as if even the compound itself listened. Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to ask him what he felt, what he knew, but silence bound her tongue. Instead, she followed when the order came. Move. The line broke into 2 units, peeling toward the compound's shadowed sides. Sand crunched beneath their boots. The air cooled with every step, but sweat slicked her spine. Her hand brushed the photograph in her pocket again, and she hated herself for touching it, for letting it anchor her when she needed to stay sharp. The walls rose higher, painted with years of neglect, faded graffiti, bullet scars, a place that had seen too much and said nothing. They reached the entry point, a metal gate rusted but locked. Sparks hissed as the breacher worked. Elena crouched, rifle angled, eyes fixed on the corners where shadows could hide. Her breath slowed, controlled, but every nerve screamed awake. The lock gave way. The gate swung open with a low groan. And the silence inside was worse. No voices, no movement, just an empty courtyard dimly lit by a single bulb swinging in the wind. Her gut twisted. Places like this were never truly empty. The team fanned out, clearing corners, checking doorways. She moved with them, each step echoing louder in her head than in her ears. The photograph felt like fire in her pocket now. She didn't want to look at the far building, but she did. A 2-story structure with broken windows, its door half open. Her throat tightened. Because she'd been here before. Not officially, not with a rifle in her hands, but years ago, another life ago. She swallowed hard, forcing the memory back down. This wasn't the time, not yet. Clear left. Right side good. The radio whispers sounded calm, too calm. Her heart was. The team stacked at the door of the main building. She found herself near the front, second position. Her fingers flexed around the rifle, her chest burned. One more breath. The door opened. The first room was bare, dust, broken chairs, a table with one leg snapped, no people, no sound. They pushed deeper. Hallways stretched narrow, every door a question, every shadow a threat. She checked left, empty, checked right, clear. But it wasn't clear, not for her. Because the smell hit her, old wood, oil, a faint trace of something sweeter buried under dust, and with it the memory. A voice low, familiar. Her chest tightened, she blinked, forced her rifle steady. Not now, not here. She kept moving. Room after room cleared, the rhythm pulling them forward, but something about the silence clawed at her. It wasn't the silence of abandonment, it was the silence of waiting. And then it broke. Not with a gunshot, not with a scream. With a whisper. A child's whisper. Elena froze. It came from behind a half-open door ahead, faint and trembling. She glanced at the man in front, the same one who had silenced them all before. His head tilted slightly, almost imperceptible. He'd heard it too. Her chest ached, she wanted to rush forward, to see, to confirm. But the hand signal came, slow, controlled. They moved. The door swung open. Inside, a boy sat curled in the corner, no older than 10. His clothes torn, his face streaked with dust and fear. His eyes, too wide for someone so small, locked on Elena. And her world tilted. Because she knew those eyes. Her breath caught. It couldn't be. But it was. She had seen those eyes before years ago, in a photograph she kept hidden, in a face she thought lost forever. Her rifle lowered an inch without her meaning to, her knees almost buckled. The others moved around her, securing the room, checking corners, whispering into radios. To them he was just a civilian, just a scared child caught in the wrong place. But to her he was a ghost made flesh. Her throat closed, she swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "We can't leave him," she whispered. Daniels shot her a look. "Nobody's leaving him, but he's not priority, we're here for the target." She nodded, forcing herself back into the mask, but her mind raced. How could this be? How could he be here? And what did it mean for the mission, for her secret, that he was alive? The boy's eyes stayed on her, wide, unblinking, as if he recognized her too. And in that silence the world shifted. The mission wasn't what she thought it was anymore. And neither was she. Why was he looking at her like that? The boy's eyes clung to hers, wide and fragile, as if she were the only anchor left in a collapsing world. Around them the team worked, checking corners, whispering updates into radios, keeping rifles raised toward unseen threats. But to Elena the noise faded. It was just him. And the storm inside her chest. She forced her rifle steady, forced her face blank, but inside her heart clawed at her ribs. It had been years since she last saw those eyes. Years since the night that ended with fire, with silence, with her running into a world that would never let her go back. She had buried that memory deep, convinced it was gone. But now here he was, a living reminder of everything she'd lost. Her pulse spiked, her breath shortened. She almost wanted to step back to escape, but her boots held her ground. "Rains!" The voice snapped her back. Daniels again. He stood at the doorway, rifle sweeping the hallway. "We can't stay here. Command says the target's upstairs. We move." Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to argue, wanted to hold on to the boy, but she knew the rules. Civilians were noted, secured, left for follow-up. They weren't the mission, not tonight. Her fingers brushed the edge of her pocket, the photograph still folded there. The one she never showed anyone, the one that kept her awake when the base went quiet. The boy blinked, his lips parted, a whisper escaping soft, almost too quiet to hear, a word, a name. Her name. Elena's chest caved, her rifle sagged an inch before she caught herself. Daniels glanced back, eyebrows tightening. What was that? Nothing, she said quickly, voice clipped, too sharp. She straightened, tightening her grip, forcing her mask back on. He's scared, that's all. But her hands trembled. The man, the silent one, stood at the far wall, watching. He hadn't spoken since they entered. He hadn't mocked, hadn't asked, hadn't questioned. But his eyes were on her now, steady, unreadable, like he knew. She turned away, unable to hold his gaze. "Let's move," she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. The team filed out. She was the last to leave, her eyes dragging back to the boy one final time. He didn't cry, didn't move, just stared at her, unblinking, as if asking a question she didn't have the strength to answer. She followed the others up the staircase. Each step groaned under their weight, dust sifting from the ceiling. The air grew heavier, thicker, as if the walls themselves held their breath. Her mind wouldn't quiet. She replayed the boy's whisper again and again, her name on his lips. How could he know it unless? She forced the thought down, not now, not yet. At the landing, the team split, half to the left, half to the right. Elena's unit pressed forward, weapons raised. The hallway stretched long and narrow, doors branching on each side, shadows twisted in the corners. Her chest was tight, her breath shallow, but she moved anyway, step by step. "Door left," Martinez whispered. "Stag check clear." "Another." "Clear." But the silence lingered thick, almost mocking. Then came the sound. A shuffle barely audible ahead. The team froze. Rifles rose, eyes sharpened. The man at point signaled 3 fingers, then 2, then 1. They pushed forward. The door swung wide, and gunfire ripped the air. Muzzle flashes lit the hall like lightning. The sound hammered her skull, deafening. Plaster burst from the walls, dust choking the air. Elena dropped, returned fire, her rifle jerking against her shoulder. Shadows moved inside the room, fast, desperate. The air reeked of cordite and sweat. Someone shouted, "Martinez hit." Her chest burned, she shifted, covering the doorway while Daniels dragged Martinez back. Blood smeared across the floor. Martinez's breath rasped, sharp and shallow. Elena's trigger finger clenched, each shot precise, controlled, fueled by a coldness she barely recognized as her own. The return fire slowed, then stopped. Silence again. Her ears rang, but she forced herself forward, stepping into the room. Bodies lay crumpled on the floor, rifles still clutched in dead hands, the walls pocked with holes. And in the corner, a man, not dead, not yet. He stared at her, eyes burning with something more than hate, more than fear, something she couldn't name. Her rifle locked on him, but her thoughts weren't steady. What if he knew? What if he'd been waiting for her? Her lips parted, a question rising, but the man gasped, blood filling his mouth, and his body went still. She swallowed hard, her chest shook once before she steadied it. "Clear," she called, though her voice cracked. The others pushed in, securing the bodies, sweeping the corners. Daniels cursed under his breath, pressing gauze against Martinez's wound. Reeves knelt beside him, murmuring something low, human, almost tender. Elena stood apart, her rifle still aimed at the dead man in the corner. Her hands shook now, slight but real, she forced them still. The silent one entered last. His boots barely made a sound. He scanned the room, eyes lingering briefly on her, then on the body in the corner. He didn't speak, but the weight of his gaze pressed harder than any words. Elena looked away first. Outside, the compound still loomed, its silence unbroken except for the whisper of wind through broken windows. But inside her, everything screamed. The boy's eyes, his whisper. Her name. She knew now there was no escaping it. This mission wasn't just about the target. It was about her. And whatever truth she'd buried was clawing its way back to the surface. Why did his eyes follow her everywhere? Even now, as the team regrouped in the battered upstairs room, Elena felt them on her. Not the enemy, not the silent man, the boy. Downstairs, they had left him under guard. Reeves had volunteered to sit with him. Something about Reeves always drew kids in. A softness he carried despite the rifle slung across his chest. But even through concrete walls, Elena swore she could still feel those eyes. The boy had whispered her name. Her name. No civilian here should have known it, not in this place, not with this distance between her present and her past. And yet he had spoken it, with the trembling certainty of recognition. Her hands curled against her knees. She sat crouched near the window, scanning the darkened street below, but her thoughts weren't on rooftops or alleyways. They were back where she didn't want them to go. The photograph. The one burning against her thigh inside her pocket. She saw it in her mind, creased edges, a smile frozen in time, the faint scent of old paper clinging to it even now. She hadn't taken it out in weeks. Couldn't, because whenever she did, the walls inside her began to crumble. But the boy's whisper had cracked them anyway. Behind her, Martinez groaned. Daniels pressed gauze tighter against his side, whispering encouragement like prayer. "Stay with me, Hermano, just stay." The sound dragged Elena back. She turned, eyes flicking to the blood pooling beneath Martinez's vest. His face had gone pale, jaw clenched against the pain. "Medevac's on the way," Daniels muttered, though the look in his eyes betrayed doubt. Elena rose, crossing the room. She dropped to one knee beside Martinez, pressing her palm gently against his shoulder. "You'll hold," she said, voice steady. His lips cracked into a weak smile. "You sound sure." "I have to be." He gave a faint laugh that turned into a cough. She felt it in her own chest, a soldier's laugh, defiant in the face of pain. She remembered her father's laugh, rough and low, the sound of a man pretending not to be afraid. Her throat tightened, she pushed it down. "We'll get you out," she said, "that's a promise." His eyelids fluttered, but he nodded, and for that moment he believed her. She stood again, her eyes catching the silent ones across the room. He leaned against the wall, arms folded, expression unreadable, watching her, always watching. She hated how it unsettled her. Why did he look at her that way? Why did it feel like he already knew? A crackle came over the radio, command's voice clipped and metallic. "Target located, second floor, north wing, move now." Elena's pulse spiked. The target, the reason they were here, the man who on paper was worth more than all of them combined, a financier, a shadow broker, someone whose hands had shaped the very war they were fighting. But Elena knew something Command didn't. Something she hadn't told them. Because that target wasn't just a name in a dossier. He was part of her past. Part of the reason she had joined. And part of the reason she still carried that photograph in her pocket. Her mouth went dry, she glanced at Daniels. His hands were still pressing Martinez's wound, his eyes sharp and tired. "Go," he said, "we'll hold here." Reeves' voice floated up from downstairs. Kids still quiet, no movement. Elena exhaled, her body felt heavier than it should, but she forced herself forward. The team stacked at the hallway. The silent one moved into position just ahead of her, his presence like a shadow she couldn't escape. The corridor stretched long, narrow, suffocating. Each step echoed louder than it should. Her heartbeat filled her ears. They reached the door. A signal passed. 3, 2, 1. The breach hit fast, flashbang, light and sound exploding through the dark. The team poured in. Elena followed. And froze. The man inside wasn't what she expected. Not a hardened warlord, not the caricature of evil painted in briefings. He was older, tired, his beard streaked with gray, his clothes wrinkled as though he had been sleeping in them. And his eyes met hers and time fractured. Because she knew them. Just like she knew the boy. Her rifle wavered, her breath caught. It couldn't be. But it was. The target, this man they had been sent to capture, was tied to her past in ways Command could never have guessed. He stepped forward, hands raised slowly, not in surrender but in something closer to recognition. His gaze fixed on her, ignoring the rifles aimed at his chest. "Elena," he said softly. Her world tilted. The room spun. The silent one moved closer, his presence steady, grounding. But his eyes burned into her, demanding answers she couldn't give. Her teammates shouted commands, their voices sharp, fractured, down on the ground. The man didn't move, his eyes never left hers. "Elena," he repeated. Her throat closed, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The photograph seared against her pocket. And for the first time in years, she felt the truth clawing free. This mission wasn't about orders. It wasn't about command. It was about her. And the ghost she thought she had buried. How do you aim at someone who once held your entire world together? Elena's hands trembled, just slightly, just enough. The rifle's stock pressed against her shoulder, but it felt wrong, heavy, unnatural. Across the room, the man's eyes held hers, steady, familiar, too familiar. She heard Daniels shouting, Reeves' boots pounding up the stairs, Martinez groaning somewhere behind. Orders filled the air like gunfire, but all of it blurred. Because the only sound that mattered was the quiet voice that had just spoken her name. Elena. She hadn't heard it spoken like that in years, soft, broken, almost like an apology. Her throat tightened, she blinked hard, but the vision didn't vanish. He was still there, hands lifted, gaze cutting through the chaos. And the photograph in her pocket might as well have been burning her alive. Her team surged around her, Daniels pushed forward, rifle trained on the man's chest, on the ground now. The silent one stepped closer, too calm, precise, like gravity itself, not shouting, not flinching, watching, always watching. The man didn't move, didn't blink, didn't look at anyone but her. Elena, he whispered again. Her lips parted, a single breath escaped. No. No, it couldn't be him. No, it couldn't be true. But it was. The lines of his face hadn't erased themselves with time. The weight in his eyes hadn't changed. He was older, worn, scarred, but still him. The boy's whisper downstairs made sense now. Because the boy wasn't just some villager caught in the crossfire. He was this man's son. And he had seen her before, long ago. Her stomach twisted, the room tilted. Elena, Daniels snapped, his voice dragged her back, sharp as a blade. Focus, he's the target, lock him down. But she couldn't, not yet. The memories tore through her. A kitchen table in another country, a younger version of her sitting on a rickety chair watching this same man laugh at something her father had said, a night when the world still felt whole, when trust hadn't been shattered. This man, this target, had once been more than just a shadow in her past. He had been family, and family had betrayed her. Elena, the man said again, his voice cracked, his hands lowered slightly, not in defiance but in plea, please. Her rifle shook. The silent one moved like a ghost, suddenly between them and the target, his presence commanding. His voice was low, controlled, the first word she had heard from him all night. Decide. That was it, one word. Her breath caught. She realized then why everyone went quiet when he spoke, because he spoke only when it mattered, and his words weren't commands, they were mirrors, forcing you to face yourself. Her team froze, Daniel's rifle hovered. Reeves had just reached the doorway, his face pale with confusion. Martinez groaned again behind them, and the sound twisted the knife deeper. The mission was splintering. Her heart slammed against her ribs. How could she explain, how could she tell them that the man they were ordered to take down wasn't just a target, that he had once sat at her father's table, that he had once promised to protect her family, that his betrayal had carved the scar she still carried? How could she admit that part of her had come here for this? Not to capture him, not even to kill him, but to finally face him. Elena, the man's voice broke now, I never meant. Shut up, Daniels barked, shoving forward. Elena's voice cut through before she could stop it. Don't. The word froze the room. Everyone stared at her. The silence was louder than the flashbang. Even Martinez, bleeding in the corner, lifted his head to look. Daniel's jaw tightened. What the hell are you doing? Her hands gripped the rifle harder, but she couldn't fire, not yet. Her chest heaved, her mouth went dry. The man's eyes glistened. I didn't choose this, he said. Not the way they told you, not the way command says, there's more. Elena's stomach churned. She wanted to scream at him, to demand the truth. But every second she waited was another second her team's trust unraveled. The silent one's gaze burned into her. Decide. The word echoed like a heartbeat. She wanted to, God, she wanted to, but part of her wasn't ready. Part of her still needed to hear something, anything, that would make sense of the photograph she carried. A noise cut through, the boy downstairs, crying now, his voice drifting up through the cracked floorboards. Elena. The room shattered again. Reeves swore under his breath, lowering his weapon slightly. That kid, he knows her, he's been saying her name. Daniels whipped his head toward her. You want to explain that? Her chest constricted. She had no words. Because how do you explain to your team that the enemy's son remembers you, that the enemy himself once called you family, that everything you've been fighting for might not be what it seems? How do you tell them, without breaking the bond that's the only thing keeping you all alive? Her lips trembled, but nothing came out. The man, her past, took a careful step forward. The silent one shifted instantly, his hand raised in warning. The room bristled with tension. But the man didn't stop, his eyes stayed locked on hers. I'm not your enemy, he said softly, not the way they want you to believe. Her chest ached, her hands shook. She wanted to believe him, she wanted to hate him, she wanted both. Her team waited. Her silence was killing them. The photograph burned hotter in her pocket, and suddenly she felt it pressing like a weight she couldn't ignore. Her father's handwriting on the back, his final words. She blinked hard, swallowing the tears that threatened. Not now. Not yet. The mission hadn't ended. It had just become something far more dangerous. And she knew deep down that whatever choice she made here wouldn't just decide the target's fate. It would decide hers. Forever. What breaks first in a soldier? The body, the will, or the silence? Elena felt hers fracture in that dim, suffocating room. The air was thick with dust and breath, and too many rifles pointed in too many directions. The man, her target, her ghost, still stood with his hands half raised, eyes locked on her. The boy below was crying her name like it belonged to him. And her team was staring at her like they didn't know who she was anymore. She wanted to vanish, to dissolve into the floorboards, to escape the crushing weight of their questions. But the silent one stepped forward, and with him came no escape. Dog, he said. Just one word again. It hit like a command, like a prayer, like the sound of a cell door closing. Her throat clenched. Daniels snapped, she owes us an explanation now. Reeves' voice was quieter, edged with something almost like betrayal. That kid knows her, the target knows her, what the hell, Elena? Martinez coughed wetly in the corner, his strength fading, but even he whispered it. Explain. 4 sets of eyes, one demand. She felt the photograph burning against her leg, the past rising like smoke in her chest. And then it broke. He knew my father. The words escaped before she could stop them. The room stilled. Daniels blinked, fury flickering into something more dangerous, suspicion. What? Her chest heaved, the words tumbled out raw, unstoppable. My father served years ago before all of this. He worked in-country logistics, advising, whatever they called it back then. He believed he was building something here, a bridge, a chance. Her eyes flicked to the man, then back to her team. And this man, her voice cracked, was at our table. He ate with us, laughed with us, promised protection. He was family until he was. The weight of it dropped heavy. Daniel's jaw clenched. You hid this. Her voice hardened. Would command have let me on this op if I hadn't. Silence ugly heavy. Reeves swore under his breath. So what? He betrayed your family. That's the story. Her eyes burned. She turned, glaring at the man. Tell them what you did. The man's gaze didn't flinch. What I did or what they told you I did. Her pulse spiked. Don't twist this. Twist, his voice cracked louder now, rough with years of weight. Your father trusted me and I never betrayed that trust, not once, but they used us both. He thought he was building something, I thought I was protecting it. And when it all collapsed, who did they blame? Me, the foreigner's friend, the disposable piece. Her rifle trembled in her hands. You disappeared, you left us, you left him. The man's face broke just for a moment, a flicker of grief. I didn't leave, I was forced out, and by the time I could come back, his voice failed, his eyes dropped. It was too late. Her chest constricted. Her father's last night came back like a knife. The sound of boots in the dark, the door slammed open, the shouting. Her father pushed her under the bed, whispering not to move, not to breathe, the gunfire, the silence that followed. And then nothing. For years. Until now. Elena's voice shook. I buried him without answers. The man lifted his head again and tears shone in his eyes. And you think I was the one who pulled the trigger? Daniel snarled. Doesn't matter who shot who. What matters is he's funding the people who shoot at us today. That's the mission, that's the truth. The silent one moved then, just enough to shift the balance of the room. His gaze cut across Elena, across Daniel's, across the man. Truth, he said quietly, everyone claims it, no one owns it. The words sank like stones. Elena's knees felt weak. She wanted to scream at all of them, to rip the photograph from her pocket and shove it into their hands, to show them her father's handwriting, proof of the bond that had been broken, proof of the weight she carried. But instead, she forced herself steady. She locked eyes with the man. The boy, he's yours. The man hesitated, then nodded. Elena's stomach dropped. Daniel swore furious. Reeves' face twisted with confusion. Martinez coughed blood. The silent one stood still, unreadable. And the boy downstairs wailed her name again, his voice breaking with fear. She closed her eyes for half a second. The sound cut her deeper than any bullet could. Because she knew what it meant. This wasn't just a mission anymore. It was a cycle, generations pulled into a war they never chose, a boy who had inherited his father's sins, a daughter who had inherited her father's grief. And in the middle, choices that could burn them all. Her eyes snapped open, her rifle steadied. Her voice was low, raw. We take him alive. Daniels exploded. Are you insane? He's too valuable to walk out breathing. Reeves looked torn, glancing between them. She might be right, Intel says. Intel says nothing, Daniels cut him off. This guy bleeds, 100 more stop shooting at us, that's the equation. Martinez groaned, whispering again, Elena, decide. The silent one stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. His voice was calm, steady. You've carried this long enough, end it. Her breath trembled, her hands were steady now, but her soul was. She thought of her father, of the night that stole him, of the promise she made standing over his grave that she'd find the truth, whatever it cost. And here it was. The truth was messy, the truth was human, the truth was standing in front of her, older, broken, but not gone. Her team wanted blood, command wanted results. But her father, he would have wanted something else. She felt it deep in her bones. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, we take him alive. The man exhaled, collapsing slightly, as though her words were the first mercy he'd heard in decades. Daniel swore again, furious, but didn't fire. Reeves lowered his rifle, uncertain but willing. Martinez gave the faintest nod before closing his eyes in pain. The silent one's gaze lingered on her, searching, measuring. And then, for the first time, she thought she saw it. Approval. The kind that didn't need words. But outside, in the distance, the sound of engines roared closer. Command's men were coming. And they wouldn't care about mercy. What happens when the real enemy isn't the one in front of you, but the voice in your ear telling you what to do? The radio crackled, harsh metallic, Command's voice cutting through the dust and blood like a blade. Secure the package, confirm kill if resistance is met, extraction inbound in 5. Package? They weren't even calling him a man, just a package. Elena's stomach twisted. Daniel's face hardened, relief and fury tangled together. Finally, we hand him over, we're done. Reeves shifted uneasily, glancing at Elena. You heard them, alive or dead doesn't matter to command. Her grip on the rifle tightened. Alive, I said, alive. Daniels rounded on her, his eyes blazing. You don't get to rewrite orders, Elena. This isn't about your past. This is about the mission. Do your damn job. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She wanted to scream, to tell him it wasn't just about her past, that it was about the boy, about the truth, about breaking a cycle that had consumed too many lives already. But the words caught in her throat. The silent one spoke instead. Orders are simple, choices are not. His voice was calm, but it carried weight, enough to make even Daniels pause. Elena's eyes burned. She looked at the man, the target, still standing, hands half raised, watching her like she was the only person who mattered. She hated him for it. She needed him for it. And the boy downstairs, God, the boy, his cries still echoed through the floorboards, shaking her resolve. She couldn't let command touch him, not after what she had seen, not after what she had lost. The engines outside grew louder, a thrum of helicopters, the ground trembling under heavy vehicles. They were close now. Daniels swore, packing, they'll be here in minutes. If we're holding this guy when they come in, it's out of our hands. Reeves muttered, and if he's already dead, it's over before it starts. The man's voice broke through, soft but sharp. If they take me, you'll never know the truth. They'll bury it, just like they buried your father. Her head snapped toward him. Her breath caught. Reeves frowned, confused. Daniels spat, don't listen to him, he's playing you. But the man's eyes didn't leave hers. You think they told you everything? You think your father died the way they said? They used him, Elena, just like they're using you. The room tilted, her stomach dropped. Her father's last night flashed in her mind, the boots, the shouting, the gunfire. For years she had believed it was the enemy, his enemy, but what if it was? Her knees went weak. Daniels grabbed her arm, snapping her back. Focus, he's a liar, he's the reason Martinez is bleeding out in the corner. He's the reason we're stuck in this hellhole, don't lose it now. Martinez groaned faintly, whispering something Elena couldn't catch. His skin was ashen, his blood soaking into the boards. Her chest clenched, she couldn't lose him, not now. The radio crackled again, 2 minutes, prepare for handoff. Her breath hitched. Time was running out. The silent one moved closer, his presence steady, grounding, his eyes locked on hers. Decide, he said. The word again, simple, heavy. Daniel's hand tightened on her arm, Reeves' rifle wavered, Martinez's breath rattled, the man's son wailed below. And in that moment, Elena felt the weight of every choice she had ever made pressing down on her shoulders. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Strength isn't about the orders you follow, it's about the ones you refuse. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Her voice came out hoarse but steady. We move not to command, to extraction with him alive. Daniel's eyes flared, you've lost your mind. Reeves hesitated, torn, then nodded slightly. She's right, if we hand him over now we don't control what happens. If we get him out on our own, maybe we still have a choice. Choice? Daniels spat. The only choice is survival. You think command's gonna let us just walk away with their golden prize? You'll get us all killed. The silent one's gaze shifted to Daniels, calm, deadly. Sometimes survival isn't the mission. The words hit like a shot. Daniel's jaw locked, his grip on Elena's arm tightened, then released. He stepped back, fury etched in every line of his face. You're all insane, he muttered, insane. Outside, the engines roared closer. A spotlight swept across the windows, dust dancing in its beam. The house shook with the force of approaching boots. Elena's heart pounded. They didn't have minutes anymore, they had seconds. She moved fast. Reeves grabbed the boy, Daniels helped Martinez, were moving out the back. Daniels glared, unmoving. Reeves swore, then bolted downstairs. The boy's cry cut off as Reeves scooped him up, his small voice muffled against Reeves' chest. The man, the target, watched Elena, something unreadable in his eyes. Gratitude, regret, maybe both. Elena didn't look at him, couldn't, not yet. The silent one moved beside her, calm as always, as though he had expected this all along. The sound of doors breaking downstairs, shouts, boots flooding in. They didn't have time. Elena grabbed the man's arm, dragging him toward the back stairwell. Move. Daniels cursed loudly, but at the last second he hoisted Martinez onto his shoulder and followed. His loyalty wasn't to her, not right now, but to the bleeding man he refused to leave behind. The house shook as command's men stormed through the front. The radio screeched again, demanding compliance. Elena ignored it. Her only focus now was the narrow back hallway, the door at the end, the sliver of night air waiting beyond. Freedom or death just steps away. The boy whimpered against Reeves' chest. The man stumbled beside her. Martinez groaned on Daniel's back. The silent one's presence pressed at her side, wordless but unyielding. Her chest burned, her legs shook. But she kept moving. Because in that moment, she understood something she hadn't before. This wasn't just about her father. It wasn't just about revenge or grief or truth. It was about choosing what kind of soldier she would be. What kind of human. And sometimes, the only way to honor the dead was to protect the living. They burst through the back door into the night. And the floodlights found them instantly. What do you do when the lights find you and there's nowhere left to run? The floodlights seared the night, burning their shadows onto the crumbling walls. Shouts cracked the silence. The metallic slam of rifles readied. Boots pounded the dirt. Elena froze, her lungs clawing for air. Around her, time splintered into fragments. Reeves clutching the boy, his arms wrapped tight around the child's trembling frame. Daniel staggering under Martinez's weight, sweat and fury dripping from his face. The man, the target, gasping with exhaustion, his eyes fixed only on her. And the silent one, still as stone, watching her as if the choice was already made. Stand down, a voice bellowed from the flood of shadows. Harsh, command, amplified through a bullhorn, cold enough to strip her bones bare. Reeves shifted, his voice tight, and they'll shoot. Daniel spat, maybe they should, better than whatever insanity this is. But even he adjusted Martinez on his shoulder, unwilling to give him up. The boy whimpered, muffled against Reeves' chest. The sound gutted Elena. She raised her rifle, not at the floodlights, not at command, but at the ground between them. Her hands were steady now. Her voice, when it came, was raw but unbroken. We're not handing him over. The silence after was suffocating. A beat, too. And then the response. Then you're traitors. The word detonated inside her, traitor. For years she had defined herself against that shadow. To be a traitor was to be less than nothing. To betray the uniform, the oath, the people beside you, it was unforgivable. But standing there, with the boy's cries in her ears and her father's ghost in her heart, she realized something. Sometimes obedience was the betrayal. Sometimes silence was the crime. And sometimes dignity meant stepping forward when everyone else stayed still. Her father's words came back, the ones she'd buried with him. Strength isn't in what they order you to do. Strength is in what you choose. The silent one shifted, not much, just enough that the floodlight caught the side of his face, his eyes locked with hers. Now, he said. Her chest tightened. Now? The word carried everything, not orders, not commands, just permission to act, to decide, to be who she was meant to be. The moment fractured. Shouts erupted, spotlights blazed, and then the first shot cracked. It wasn't hers. It came from command's side, wild, warning, or maybe deliberate, she'd never know. But it shattered the standoff. Chaos roared alive. Reeves ducked, clutching the boy tighter. Daniel stumbled under Martinez's weight, teeth bared as he dragged him toward the cover of a low wall. The man staggered beside Elena, caught between trust and terror. And the silent one, he moved like smoke, smooth, precise. His rifle spoke, not with fury but with focus, short bursts, controlled. Each round deliberate, carving them a sliver of space in the night. Elena's heart pounded. She returned fire, not to kill but to shield. Every shot was a barrier, a warning, a plea. Not him, not the boy, not this way. The world collapsed into noise, shouts, gunfire, the scream of engines overhead. But through it all she heard something else. The boy's cry. Her father's voice. Her own breath, steady now. They fell back inch by inch into the maze of ruins behind the house. Stone walls crumbling, alleys twisting, shadows swallowing them whole. Command's floodlights swept desperately, but every corner hid them for just one more second, one more breath. They made it to a narrow passage where the night wrapped tight. Reeves huddled with the boy, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Daniels lowered Martinez against the wall, blood soaking his uniform, whispering to him the way only a brother in arms could. And Elena, she leaned against the cold stone, her chest heaving, her soul burning. The man stood across from her, bent with exhaustion, but his eyes still on her, always on her. Elena, he whispered. Her jaw clenched, she raised a hand to silence him, not now, not here. Because in this moment, words weren't what mattered. Choices were. The silent one stepped into the center of the group. He scanned each face, Martinez pale and fatting, Daniels torn between rage and loyalty, Reeves clutching the boy, Elena shaking but unbroken. And then he spoke. One path. That was all. No plan, no map, no orders, just truth. One path forward. Not all of them would make it, maybe none of them, but the choice had already been made. Elena closed her eyes for half a second. She saw her father's face, tired but kind. She saw the boy's small hands clutching Reeves' vest. She saw the man who had once been family, now enemy, now something else. And she felt the silence of all the soldiers who had come before her, those who obeyed, those who broke, those who never got the chance to choose. Her eyes opened, her rifle steadied. We move. And they did. Through alleys soaked in moonlight, through shadows thick with danger, through gunfire that sparked against stone. Step by step, breath by breath. Not for command, not for orders, but for each other. For the boy who should never inherit this war. For Martinez clinging to life. For Reeves, whose hands still trembled but never let go. For Daniels, who cursed every step but kept moving anyway. For the silent one, whose voice came only when it mattered. And for her father, whose dignity lived on in the choice she made. By the time dawn bled across the horizon, their bodies were ragged, their ammo nearly gone, their hope fraying. But they were still moving, still together. And when the last shot finally fell silent, when the dust settled and the world stilled, there was no cheer, no victory, just breath, just silence. Elena lowered her rifle. Her hands shook now, not from fear, but from everything she had carried, and everything she had finally set down. The boy stirred, his small voice breaking the quiet. Elena. She knelt, brushing the dust from his face. Her voice cracked, but her words were steady. You're safe. For the first time in years, she believed it. The man watched her, his expression unreadable, his eyes wet. Maybe he saw forgiveness. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. Because forgiveness wasn't the mission. Survival wasn't the mission. The mission was dignity. And dignity doesn't shout. It doesn't plead. It doesn't explain. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And then it leaves its silence behind, like a shadow that lingers long after the light fades.